Good morning, everyone. So here are some representative deep learning applications that we're working on at SDSC. So we get data from a variety of sources, and we apply different types of deep learning models depending on the type of problem that we see for a particular application. So one of those applications is cardiac image analysis. And the goal for this is to aid in early detection of heart disease, which is the leading cause of death for men and women in the United States. So cardiac imaging, such as MRI and CT, are an invaluable tool for diagnosing heart disease because it allows doctors to be able to look at what's going on in the heart, the structure and the functionality of the heart. The problem, though, is that this process can be very time-consuming, very labor-intensive, and very often error-prone. So we want to be able to apply deep learning and machine learning to automate this process so that we can make it more efficient and provide more consistent results. Okay, so this is a picture of your heart. Does it look familiar? Okay, so you probably have learned somewhere along the way that there are 4 chambers in the heart, as shown here. The left ventricle is the one that pumps blood all throughout your body, and so it's the largest heart chamber, and its structure and functionality are important in diagnosing heart disease. So it's important to be able to pick out the left ventricle, or the LV, from a cardiac image. So this is a typical short-axis cardiac image, and it shows you a cross-section view of the heart. And this circular object here in the middle, that's the left ventricle. So in order to pick out the LV from the image, we want to train the deep learning model to predict the LV contour, which can then be used to segment the LV from the rest of the image. So for the current approach, what we are doing is we're training the model to predict the endocardial contour, which is shown in green, and that delineates the inner wall of the left ventricle. The model that we use for LV segmentation is called a UNet, and this is a deep learning model that has been used with a lot of success in a lot of biomedical applications. So the UNet takes as input a cardiac image, and then it is trained to output a mask indicating where the LV is in that input image. So that's where the green part is. So this shows the model's prediction of where the LV is. So the center image is the prediction, the model's prediction of where the LV is. The right image is the ground truth. That's the expertly drawn contour. And then the left image shows, compares the two. So green and white are good. Green and white show agreement between the model's prediction and the ground truth, and red and blue indicate where there are discrepancies. So for this example, it just happens to be, just by coincidence, that this is a very good prediction, right? So there's a lot of agreement between the model's prediction and the expert contour. And LV segmentation is just an initial step. There are a lot of research avenues that we want to pursue here. For example, we want to be able to incorporate the temporal component because we want to be able to model heart dynamics, which is also important. Okay, so another set of deep learning applications that we're looking at also has to do with image analysis. But now we're looking at satellite images, so it's a little bit different scale. One of these applications is land cover classification. And what this means is identifying the land cover types of an image, of a region captured by an image. And land cover is anything that you see on the ground. It could be soil, it could be grass, it could be dirt, it could be cement. So the idea is that given a satellite image, what's shown on the left, we want to train the model to be able to generate a land cover map that's shown on the right that specifies what kind of land cover categories are seen in that image. And land cover maps are useful in a lot of different applications. For example, land use analysis, to study urban development, to look at field types, which is important for analyzing wildfire. Now, land cover maps and other land data products for the United States are available. The problem is that they're generated very infrequently, every 2 or more years. And they're also based on medium resolution satellite imagery. So the spatial and temporal resolution of existing land data products do not necessarily meet the needs for a lot of applications. And so our goal for this research is to generate more frequent products, more accurate products based on up-to-date and high-resolution satellite imagery. And we want to apply deep learning and machine learning to automate this process so that it can scale up to large scenes. So this diagram shows our pipeline for ingesting and analyzing satellite images. So satellite images are downloaded, they're pre-processed, and then tiled into smaller manageable chunks called image tiles. Then these image tiles are fed into a deep learning model that extracts features and then classifies the land cover types that is associated with each image tile. So for land cover classification, we use two different types of networks. A convolutional neural network, which directly classifies the land cover category in the input image. And we also use a UNet, and that segments the input image into different types of land cover categories. And this shows some preliminary results that we're getting from our models. So you can see that the CNN and UNet land cover maps are very similar. And they both refine the categories that show in the existing land cover map. And that is because we start out with higher resolution imagery, 5 meters versus 30 meters, and we also use more recent satellite images. So land cover classification is a supervised approach where we can use the ground data as a target signal to train the deep learning models. For many applications, though, the ground truth data is incomplete, unreliable, outdated, or just simply not available. And so for these cases, we need an unsupervised approach. And in our unsupervised approach, we use a deep learning model to extract features from the input image, and then we cluster these images, and then we visualize the results so that we can analyze what we're getting. So one of the applications that we're looking at is locating schools in rural Liberia. And this is a project that we're working on in collaboration with UNICEF, and this is important because UNICEF wants to be able to allocate much needed resources to improve educational opportunities for children worldwide. This is the clustered image histogram, and this is the results of our unsupervised pipeline. And what you can see here, so each column corresponds to one cluster. So all of the images that you see in one column are images that are assigned to a particular cluster. And what you can see here is there is a progression of open, rural, heavily vegetated areas on the left over to the right where you see more developed images. And when we analyze the clusters to the right, we see that there are indeed clusters that capture images where schools are located. And this is a typical image from one of those school clusters. We see that in this part of Liberia, schools are often built kind of on the outskirts of a settlement, off of a road that leads outside of the settlement, as we see here in this image. And we also see that the clusters together capture the structure of the neighborhood. So what's shown here, the different colors are images that are assigned to different clusters. So what we're seeing here is that the white cluster captures images in the center of the settlement. The yellow clusters capture things that are surrounding the settlement center. The blue cluster captures the outskirts of the settlement, and then the pink cluster captures things that are outside of the settlement in a more rural area. And another benefit of our unsupervised approach is that this provides a very effective way of identifying the regions of interest, which are schools in this case. And the ROIs are often, they often make up a very small part of the entire scene. So what we see here is this is the area that we analyzed in Liberia. The orange squares, each square is an image tile, and all of the orange squares are images from the school cluster. And the pink circles are the actual schools. So what we're seeing here is that the areas where the system thinks that there are schools make up only about a little bit more than 1% of all of the images. And so almost 99% of the scene can be discarded as noise. So it's a very effective way for identifying ROIs. Another deep learning application that we are looking at has to do with performance prediction for distributed workflows. And the goal here is to enhance system performance by predicting job failures. Because you have a lot of system degradation when a job fails, and there's a lot of wasted resources. And we use a deep learning model to predict these job failures. And then once these are identified, we can preemptively terminate them and restart them as necessary. For this work, we look at computer jobs from the Bell 2 experiment, which is a particle physics experiment. This generates a huge amount of data, and it has a lot of really complex data analysis workflows involving geographically distributed researchers as well as resources, lots of different types of hardware and software, and of course, very large working data sets. So the data that was analyzed consists of 2 years' worth of Bell 2 jobs. And the features that are input to the model capture the static and dynamic characteristics of these jobs. The model that we used is a long short-term memory model. It's a recurrent neural network, and it is trained to predict failure and success for every heartbeat, every time step. The goal here is to train the network to identify these likely to fail jobs as early as possible in the job life cycle. And preliminary results show that we can get up to a 14% resource utilization, improved resource utilization with this approach. So job failure prediction leads to improved system reliability and enhanced system performance. Okay, so I've given you a really quick overview of some of the deep learning applications that we have at SDSC, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. No questions? Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.